So now in this tutorial, we're going to talk about string interpolation. So first, before I talk about that, I just want to display something in the browser so you guys can see. I'm just going to start by printing out. I'm going to remove all of this and I'm going to type h1 and I'm going to say hello world. And if you go to the browser, you're going to see that we have hello world displayed over here because in our HTML, we have written this h1 tag and we've added hello world as the inner content. So, or the text content. So we can have more stuff. We could say lorem and it will be displayed over here. Nothing fancy, nothing you haven't seen before. This file is going to be the CSS, which we'll use to do some styling. So I'm just going to change the color of that H1 to red so you can see what I'm talking about. And as you can see, it changes to red. So I'm going to delete that. And the other file that we have is this spec file. This spec file, we don't really need to worry about that. This is just some unit testing, right? So if you're interested in unit testing, then you can learn more about that, but we're not going to worry about unit testing in this tutorial. If you want, you can even delete this entire file. And the next file that we have is this logic file. Sorry, it's the TypeScript. It's a TypeScript file that basically just has a class, but this is not a regular class. I mean, same syntax, but the only difference here is that this is a component. Basically, if you notice on top, it marks it as a component using this thing called a decorator. So a decorator basically marks a certain class as like a special type of class that has certain functionalities that makes it a bit more peculiar than a regular class. So this provides some metadata about this class. It specifies that its selector name is root. So if we go to index, I did mention that we're calling the root component here. So if you see here, we have root, this root custom HTML. So this root name comes from what we specify here in the selector. So we can change this to whatever we want. We can really change it to X, whatever we want, and it will still work. So if I change that to X, and I reload, you'll see that we get the component here. So I'll take it back to root, and if I take it back to root, you'll see that nothing gets displayed here because it doesn't know what root is because we've changed it to X, right? So I'm going to change it back to root and it should be working pretty fine. So that's a selector, and for template URL, this is just locating the HTML file that we're going to be using in this component. So this is going to be app.component.html. So as you can see in this current root, look for app.component.html, which is this HTML file. And this styles URLs is for styling. So yeah, that's for all our style sheets. Nothing fancy there as well. And what we have here is a property. So you know that classes have properties, right? We have a property here and we have defined the name of that, or we have assigned tutorial, the tutorial string value in title. And by doing that, we are able to do something really cool that I'm going to show you in a sec. This is called string interpolation. So we can do this, these curly brackets, and then inside these curly brackets we can add our property. So I'll say title, and if I go back, you'll see that we have tutorial. So I can say something like, let me go back to the TS file, and I'm going to change this to name. Oops. So I'm going to change that to name. Did I do something in the spec file? Why is it red? Okay, yeah. So yeah, now it's complaining. But never mind, if this is giving you problems, you can actually delete it, really. It's not really needed. Don't worry about that. Anyway, we can change this to name and we could say hello name. If I go back to my TS file, I'm going to change the value of this name to, I'll say Onotwa. And you see here it says hello Onotwa. So you can add whatever your name is here. That's my name specifically. Okay, so that's basically what string interpolation is. You can have a whole bunch of things there really in string in string interpolation. You can have expressions like I don't know, 1 plus 4, and it's gonna give you 5. So you can have expressions. You could have I don't know. You can concatenate values. You can say, hey. So, but by the way, if you do this, so this is a string, right? Pay attention to that. So it should print out hey because that is the actual value. You can concatenate that with another value. You can say space. You can say John, and you'll see that we get hey John over here. You can concatenate it with the name property that we have in our TS file, and you'll see that it prints out hey Onotwa. You can add a space here. Yeah. So that's basically um, another thing that you can do in string interpolation. Another thing is you can invoke certain properties or like certain properties and methods that belong to a string value. So you could invoke length and you see that you get 6. You could have to uppercase. So yeah, you can invoke methods as well. So it's going to change Onotwa to an uppercase value. If you want, you could have what else can you do? You can also create functions. You can create functions. So like you'd say get name. So we want to have something. Let's say this is private and we have no access to it. Let me just remove that. Okay, this is actually starting to be annoying at this point. So I think I'm gonna delete that. Yeah, move to recycling bin. So yeah, what I want to do in my TypeScript file, I want to call this get name. So I'm gonna create a function, actually a method because it belongs to a class. And you'll notice that I'm not using function at the beginning because it's not really a function, it's a method. Right. So what I want to do is I just want to return the name property. So we want to return this dot name. So yeah, if I go back and I call get name, you will see that I get Onodwa back because yeah, this value contains the value Onodwa. And since we made that private, it should complain because name is private. So it says name is private and only accessible within class app component. So yeah, that's basically it. But there are a couple of things that you can't do with string interpolation, like assigning values. Like if you want to assign something to a value, like you want to assign the value 3 to x, then it's going to complain and it's going to tell you that bindings cannot contain assignments at column 6. So you can't do that, and also you can't make use of global variables. Like if you want to use window dot location, you can't use that. As you can see, it tells you that property window does not exist on type app component. It doesn't know how to locate that. So that's basically it. So if you want to make use of window, say for instance you want to get the current URL that you're in, so you want to use window.location.href, you can't use it like that. And an easy way to use it is by just creating a property of location or like URL or something, and then oops, and then pass in window.location.url, and then in your HTML you would just call the URL property and it should now give you localhost 4200, the entire URL.